Good afternoon, Trinidad and Tobago. I'm Rishi Harinanan. C News is live. Topping the news at this time. The Ministry of National Security has commended the agencies that were responsible for the recapture of escaped prisoner Vicky Boodram. Boodram, along with a 32-year-old woman, was held at a house at Lachus Road, Pinal at around 7 p.m. yesterday. 35-year-old Boodram escaped from the remand prison in Aruca on Monday afternoon after two police officers went to the prison with documents claiming she was required to appear in the Tunapuna Magistrates Court. Since then, police had been on the search for her recapture. The Ministry of National Security has congratulated the police service, prison service and the intelligence agencies for their coordinated efforts, hard work and swift action in recapturing Boodram. The ministry says it recognizes the professionalism, dedication to duty and leadership exhibited by the officers involved, which played an integral role in the investigative process and operational exercise into this case. Boodram, who is on 175 fraud-related charges, now faces an additional charge of escaping lawful custody. The 32-year-old woman, who was in the house where Boodram was recaptured, could be facing charges relating to harboring a fugitive. Well, on Thursday, the Acting Minister of National Security, Stuart Young, confirmed that forged documents were used in the escape of Vicky Boodram. Minister Young said the government, as well as the TTPS and prison service, were working to figure out where the breakdown took place. To some other news now. A 32-year-old Chaguanas man was killed after trying to fight off some bandits. Reports say at around 3 o'clock this morning, Ashram Ramnath of Chandanagore Old Road was shot and killed by two men who invaded his home. Initial reports from police say Ashram put up a fight with the bandits, which resulted in him being shot in the chest. As a result, Couva North Member of Parliament Ramona Ramdial is renewing calls for mobile patrols in every community in her constituency. She is also calling on the Minister of National Security Edmund Dillon, Commissioner of Police Stephen Williams, to equip Central Police with all the necessary resources to fight high crime rate in the region. The network of NGOs is calling for action to get sexual harassment legislation which can be implemented. This after allegations of sexual harassment against Angostura Chairman Dr. Rolf Balgobin were dismissed by the company's board of directors after an internal investigation into the charges. The NGO doesn't agree with the board's decision and said these charges are not new. It noted as far back as 2010, the network spoke out when the president appointed Mr. Balgobin as an independent senator. In light of the Angostura situation, the network said the time has come for all right-thinking citizens, men and women, to speak out against this injustice and support the women involved with a strong call for action. It said the trauma experienced by women who are abused by men in power positions reaches not only the victim, but the family, friends, and co-workers. The NGO continues to call for Angostura to be made to take appropriate action against Dr. Balgobin and protect all its employees against abuse. Moving on now to some other news, the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission is moving towards using more renewable energy or from natural gas. And to do this, there is need to make amendments to the legislation. T&TEC's General Manager, COURTENAY, says the company completed a pilot solar project and a small-scale wind resource survey in Tobago towards the implementation of renewable energy locally.
T&TEC has completed a manual entitled Wiring for Renewables in anticipation of an expanded renewable energy implementation at the domestic level, and the publication hinges on amendments to the T&TEC Act. This is work associated, I have to say, in a practical way, because if you are going to roll out something locally, you have to have some regulations, some guidelines to determine how customers must wire their premises, what are the standards for the circuit breakers and circuit labeling, and the whole incorporation of renewable energy into the wiring code and connectivity.
He said this was done to ensure T&TEC is ready and prepared for when there are amendments to the legislation to allow interconnection to renewable energy into the system.
So with the introduction of renewable energy, where at the domestic level particularly, you can have installations which can now house PV cells or wind turbines, which allow for a production of surplus energy to flow from something called an installation back onto the grid, is at variance with the legislation. Because if you are flowing from something to the grid, well, then you are a generator. You are not an installation anymore. So in simple terms, We have to get the act amended to say that an installation is not just something can receive power, but can also, through other means, generate and put power back on the grid.
This is the C News Live report at noon. Remember, you can keep up to date with all the latest news on our website at ctvtt.com, or you can check out our Facebook and Twitter pages at C News Live. Today commemorates World AIDS Day, and with the many activities planned, Tobago is combining the arts with education to make the day more meaningful. Dr. Faith YISRAEL, the founder of the imanbet Knesset Foundation, says that stigma attached to getting tested is still manifested in this country.
Well, I guess people are still reluctant to get tested, and possibly because of two things. When they get tested, that identifies them as being HIV positive. And if you have communities where people are still stigmatizing you, where people still shun you, then I will not want to have people know that I am HIV positive. So I would prefer not to get tested.
She said this is the biggest barrier to bringing the disease to an end, but she does acknowledge that the stigma has decreased somewhat. Ms. YISRAEL says that we are very fortunate in this country, as the drugs needed to deal with the disease are supplied free of charge. Plus, there is pre- and post-counseling for the disease. Today, Ms. YISRAEL says they'll be testing for the disease at many health centers in the Sister Isle, such as Roxborough and Scarborough health centers, plus the public is invited to a special event.
Asking the public to join us as we make what is known as a human ribbon outside of the mall. And after we do that, then we'll go and have a typical stage production where we talk about HIV, we talk about the risk related to HIV, but we again intertwine it with a theatrical, with a kind of musical and poetry and that kind of thing.
Well, the Minister of Labour, Jennifer Baptiste-Primer, says managing HIV and AIDS in and through the workplace not only protects the rights of workers to manage their health and their livelihood, but can improve productivity at both the enterprise and national levels. As such, she acknowledged the work of all their partners and stakeholders, without whose tireless efforts and contribution the ministry's objectives would not be realized. It is therefore clear that all stakeholders can benefit from a strong collaborative response to HIV and AIDS. She is urging each stakeholder to take up the mantle and be the force of change that our society requires. Through civil society activism and social mobilization, together we can transform a potentially frightening reality into an opportunity for hope. Well, now for the weather this afternoon, look out for the occasional interval of showers. There is a risk of the odd thunder shower over a few areas. Seas are slight to normal with waves up to 1.5 meters in open waters, with it being near calm in sheltered areas. Maximum temperatures will be 32 degrees Celsius at Piaco and 30 degrees Celsius at Crown Point. Well, the Minister of Sport, DARRYL Smith, says that his ministry is working on an incentive policy for Trinidad and Tobago's athletes. He says they deserve the best for their hard work.
We're very proud of the guys, Jeremy and the 4x400 team. We're proud and happy with all our athletes, all those who assisted with that team, who went to those games in London, from the trainers, the coaches, the administrators, the entries. Mr. Serrett and his team was doing a fantastic job. In our history, in Trinidad and Tobago's history, we've never had a reward and incentive policy for athletes.
The minister says the urge to reward athletes traditionally began 60 years ago, but now it will take only a few more weeks for this thinking to bear fruit. He says that all stakeholders, including the public, were invited to contribute to the exercise.
Of athletes, NGBs, coaches, parents, trainers, and so on were part of that consultation. So it's not a minister's document, it's not a ministry document, it's the people of Trinidad and Tobago's document, and I'm very proud of it. And I think it's long overdue. I mean, all these years, the history of Trinidad, we've never had this. And it's in front of the...
The new policy will be extended over 10 years. He made it clear that although most T&T athletes are motivated by their urge to compete for this country, the new policy will be a solid incentive for them for even better performances.